giving me this opportunity to talk about my work. And so I'm going to talk about search for axion-like particles in heavy ion collisions at the LHC. So first of all, axions are scalars or pseudoscalar complex fields, which are postulated to solve the strong CP problem in the quantum chromodynamics. And axion-like particles are pseudoscalars, which can couple to standard model particles, where mass and coupling relationship is not fixed. So in this talk, I'm going to talk about mainly ALPS is coupling to photons. So the coupling of this pseudoscalar ALP to photons is given by this Lagrangian, where this delta mu a is a axion-like particle field, ma is the axion mass, and ga gamma is the coupling constant to the photon. And this f mu nu, it implies that the ALPS can be produced by photon-photon fusion, and in the final state, it gives the two photon. So that we are searching for, and with this, I think I will show in my talk that it will be good to search for axion-like particles in the ultra-peripheral heavy ion collisions. So I will talk about why it is important and why it is beneficial also. And these are the constraints on axion-like particles starting from 10 raised to minus 15 GeV to around 10 raised to 3 GeV. So these are the constraints by astrophysical experiments. And here you can see at the LHC and at the Bell too, we can constrain higher masses at the Bell and LHC. So mainly I'll be focusing on the LHC results. So as I mentioned that we can search for axion-like particles in the ultra-peripheral collision. So ultra-peripheral collisions are those where this impact parameter is greater than the radius of these two nuclei. So these two nuclei does not interact via hadronic interaction, and instead they interact via the electromagnetic interaction. And because these are ions, means we are considering ions here. So because of that, the electromagnetic field which is generated is huge. It is of the order of 10 raised to 14 Tesla. And this electromagnetic field can be treated as a quasi-real photons. And since this photon flux is proportional to the atomic nuclei, to the number of the atomic nuclei, so which is for the case of heavy ion, that is for the lead, it is 82. So for that, because of that, this photon flux is proportional to Z square. We have a large photon flux from the heavy ion collision compared to proton-proton. So just to give a brief idea why we are considering heavy ion collisions here.
So Ruchi, by quasi-real photons, you mean the photons have p square very small?
Yes. The virtuality of the photon is very less.
Yeah. What does that come from? I didn't follow.
Okay, so it comes from basically this, so it depends on the radius of the emitting nuclei. And to probe the ultra-peripheral collision, these photons should be quasi-real. So it is inversely proportional to the radius of this nuclei.
The virtuality.
Yes.
That's it. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the center of mass energy which we are probing at for the lead-lead collision is 5.02 TeV. If we compare it to the proton-proton collision, it was 13 TeV for the RUN2 case, and RUN2 scenario was from 2015 to 2018. And the luminosity for 2015 and 18 is 390 and 1600 microbarn inverse, and while for the proton-proton collision it is higher, it is around 160 femtobarn inverse. And compared to proton-proton collision, as I mentioned that the photon flux is proportional to z square. So as 2 photons are emitted from each hadron, so we have an enhancement of the factor z raised to 4 with respect to proton-proton collision. And the maximum photon energy is inversely proportional to the radius of the emitting ion. So the photon energy is around 170 GeV, just to give a brief idea, like how what are the numbers. And from the proton, the photon energy is higher. It is of the order of 1 TeV. So the main advantage over here is in the ultra-peripheral collision, as we do not have any hadronic interactions. These are clean exclusive events. And in the lead-lead collisions, we also do not have any pileup compared to proton-proton collision, where there is a large pileup. And the region which we are probing is axion mass of the order of around 10 GeV. And if we consider proton-proton collision, then we can probe axion masses above 100 GeV. So today I'm going to show the results which are already in the journals by Atlas and the CMS collaboration. So for the ultra-peripheral collision, the total cross-section for the axion-like particle production in the narrow width approximation is given by this formula. This decay width is proportional to the square of the coupling of the axion and the photon, and it is also proportional to the cube of the mass of the axion-like particle. And this factor over here, that is L gamma gamma, is the photon luminosity. So photon luminosity we can look from here. So it is evaluated from this formula. So it is basically the impact parameter B1, and B2 is the impact parameter that is the distance from the ion center to the interaction point, that is where the axion was produced. So that we considered, and E1 and E2 are the energies of the incoming photon. And then we take the photon flux and we integrate it from the B1 or B2 greater than RA to the infinity, and then we get this photon luminosity. And P is the probability for the absence of any hadronic interaction. And in order to ensure that these are ultra-peripheral collision, the integral is as I mentioned, it is considered from B1 or B2 greater than RA. RA is basically the radius of this ion, and the virtuality of photon also needs to be smaller in order to probe it as a whole electrically charged object. If the virtuality or the momentum transfer is higher, then it will break the ion. So that we don't want, but instead what we want is the momentum transfer should be less of this photon, and these photons should interact with each other and then give the 2 photon in the final state as we are expecting. So the analysis strategy, or to say main features, is how we can look for axion-like particles in the detector at LHC. Is basically this is expected. This process gamma gamma goes to axion-like particle, and again 2 photons in the final state. It is expected to modify the rates of light by light scattering. So this light by light scattering process is also shown here. In this process also 2 photons are coming from the each hadron, and in the final state we have 2 photons. So if we see the like axion-like particle invariant mass over here, then this green color histogram is the light by light scattering. So it is the continuum process, while the axion-like particle which we are considering over here is the resonance like production. So that way we can say we can differentiate between this light by light process and the axion-like particle process. So in this theoretical prediction, which was provided by Simon Napen and all in 2017, So what they considered over here is they considered basically two ALP masses value at around 15 GeV and at around 40 GeV, and they took into account the energy resolution of around 0.5 GeV, and the cross section they considered was around 5 nanobarn, with the integrated luminosity is considered 1 nanobarn inverse. So yeah, so and there are also different kinds of backgrounds which can also contribute as a two photon state in the final state. So I'm going to talk about that in the detail. So the first background process is the fake or the Bremsstrahlung, which comes from the exclusive QED process, in which these two photons are emitted. So it is basically ultra peripheral collision process. And in the final state, we have exclusively two electrons, that is electron and positron pair produced. And this electron can be misidentified as a photon. If one of the two electron undergoes a hard Bremsstrahlung, then what happens is that electron track goes near the beam pipe, and we cannot reconstruct that track. But what we see is just the photon in the electromagnetic calorimeter. So if that happens to both this, that is to electron and also to the positron, then this can mimic the final state which we have for the ALPS or for the light by light scattering. And you can see here that the cross section for this process is very high. It is of the order of 20 millibarn. So because of that, it is a important and the dominant background for our case. But later I will show that we can reduce this background by applying very tight photon identification criteria. And another process is the central exclusive production, in which this two photon comes from the fusion of the two gluons, and in the final state we have two photons. So this process was generated with the super-Schick event generator, and when we did this analysis, this process was means there was no Monte Carlo event generator available for the heavy ion. So this process was only available in the proton-proton collision. So we took the proton-proton process and then scaled it for the heavy ion by taking this quantity, that is A square and Rg raised to 4. So A is basically atomic mass number, which is 208. Rg is the gluon shadowing factor, and S square is the probability to produce diphoton system exclusively without any hadronic activity. So that was considered around 100%. And as you can see, we do not have this process for the heavy ion collision. There was a large theoretical uncertainty due to modeling of this rapidity gap survival probability. But later in the analysis, we normalize this in the control region, and then we estimate the amount of this background in our signal region. And also, this process has a larger PT than the light by light scattering process, or to say exon-like particle production. And these photons are not back to back. So we can apply few cuts, and then we can suppress this background.
Sorry, a naive question.
Yes.
What is the meaning of this rapidity gap survival?
Oh, rapidity gap survival probability is basically this S square. So it is the probability to produce a diphoton system without any hadronic activity.
What is the rapidity gap between two photons?
No, it is not between two photons. It is between two ions.
So
which
you
are
are
incoming.
detecting outgoing ions somehow. Is that it?
Can you repeat?
Yeah, we're just trying to understand what is the rapidity gap, first of all.
Okay, so it is the gap between these two ions.
You mean at the time of interaction?
Yes.
But how can you measure it? That's the thing.
It means we are not measuring it. These are from the from the Monte Carlo point of view. That is
So
from
you,
the event generation point of
okay.
view.
So you assume that
Yeah.
there's a distribution of rapidities, gaps at which the interaction point happens.
Sorry, I'm confused. Of the original ions, so one should have very high positive and one should have very high negative rapidity, right?
Yes.
And presumably all the measurements we will do are in some mid rapidity region, which is comfortably in between these two rapidities. What's the meaning of rapidity gap survival? I am not understanding. So these rapidities of the original ions are pretty large, positive and negative. Is that correct?
Yes. It is
And
correct.
presumably all your measurements will be in some, I don't know, eta less than 5 or something like that? Or,
Yes.
which is comfortably within this gap of the original ions, right?
Yes.
So,
I mean, the original ions are at plus and minus infinity, by definition, because they're traveling only in the z direction.
right.
So
The same thing.
okay. So for the Higgs, or vector boson fusion channels, the rapidity gap essentially refers to the rapidity between. So instead of ions, you would have quarks. In that case, the diagram is very similar, and the rapidity gap is between the final state jets that come out. So they are basically. So in that case, the rapidity gap would have been between the ions that are on the right hand side, not the incoming ones.
I think here also the same thing. One of them is emitting a gluon and then proceeding.
Yeah, so that is what I would think. But to estimate this, then you need to somehow measure the ions on the other side, no?
Actually, we are not estimating this. It is assumed when we are taking this Monte Carlo event generator. So inside that it is assumed.
What we are wondering, Ruchi, is that are you identifying these lead ions?
No, we are not identifying.
So you are just identifying only 2 photons.
Yes.
That's all.
Yes.
And you are vetoing also some events. Vetoing the events if there is anything in the forward colorimeters.
Yes, exactly.
So you are assuming that these lead ions are proceeding in the almost original direction.
Yes.
Means they are not coming within, say, eta equal to 5.2 or something.
No.
So how
these lead ions go just near the beam pipe because of the ultra-peripheral collisions.
No, but what we are wondering, I'm also wondering, is that why is it at all coming into our consideration for the experimental analysis?
Means now I understand the question. So that suppose if one of the ion breaks from this, then we might have some hadronic activity, and we don't want that. So when these events were generated, it was considered that we should not have any hadronic activity because of the breakup of one of these ions, and it means this rapidity of these 2 ions should be it should be large enough, and only this.
You mean some unrelated, I mean, some part of it comes out, some hadrons that linger in the mid rapidity region that you are interested in, something like that?
Yes. means some gluon exchange happens, and then in the final state we have 2 photons. But these ions go intact, and it does not give any additional hadronic activity.
Okay.
So that's a background that you have to remove, and
Yes.
there's an uncertainty on that background.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I will talk about experimental search at the LHC. So basically, first I'm going to talk about the CMS analysis and how we perform the analysis, and later try to search for Axion-like particles. So as I mentioned that to search for Axion-like particles, it can come as a resonance over the light by light scattering process. So first, this light by light scattering process, it was recently observed, and the evidence was provided. So it was the first analysis from CMS, which I'm showing here. And in the same analysis, we then later applied the limits on Axion-like particles. So first we have to search for the light by light scattering process. So I'm going to talk about that. And then from that, how do we search for Axion-like particles? So that I will explain. So here you can see the CMS detector. Inside we have the tracker, in which we can measure the movement of the charged particle tracks. And outside that, in the blue color, we have electromagnetic calorimeter. And outside that, in the yellow, we have hadronic calorimeter. And in the forward region, we have hadron forward calorimeter. And photon pseudo rapid photon eta is restricted, means we can measure it up to 2.5. And then this light by light scattering phenomena, or the process which we are looking, it is of kind exclusive process. So exclusive means we just have exclusively two photons in the event, and we do not have any activity apart from these 2 photons. And to make sure that we apply different criteria on different calorimeters and also on the tracker. So we have to apply the exclusivity condition, and that we have applied up to eta less than 5.2. So we are also utilizing this forward calorimeter. And to search for this kind of events, we are also using a specific trigger where we have exclusively 2 towers in the electromagnetic calorimeter. And then later I will explain that we should not have any activity in the tracker, hadron calorimeter, or in the muon detectors. So so 1 tower is basically it is 5 by 5 crystals, which makes a 1 tower at the trigger level. And in the electromagnetic calorimeter, there are around 76,000 scintillating crystals. And this 5 by 5 crystals make 1 electromagnetic calorimeter tower. And that tower we use later in the analysis. Okay, so I will briefly explain how do we reconstruct the electrons and photons in the electromagnetic calorimeter. Photons basically undergoes pair production, and it gives electrons, or it showers through the electromagnetic calorimeter. And same way, electron also showers through the electromagnetic calorimeter. So this construction of individual particle starts from the reconstructing this energy deposit in the calorimeter crystals. So we start by grouping together the crystals with energy greater than 80 MeV in the barrel region. Barrel means eta less than 1.46, and EE is, I'm sorry for the acronyms over here. EE is basically electromagnetic calorimeter in the end cap region. So there the threshold is higher. So these thresholds are basically 2 to 3 times bigger than the electronic noise. So then once we have these energy deposits, what we do is we cluster them. And the one with the maximum energy deposit in the specific region is called as, it is called as seed. And it should have energy greater than 1 GeV. And then we find other clusters nearby this seed cluster, and we form the Mustache supercluster. So why the name Mustache? Because of the magnetic field, charge particle bends in the phi direction, as you can see over here, and there is also a small bending in the eta direction. So Mustache supercluster, it collects the clusters around the seed cluster, and then it makes the supercluster. Supercluster is basically it also collects the energy in which the photon converts via pair production. And suppose it has given some energy deposition, not in the very nearby crystals, but in some far away crystal, then it recovers that. And also electron bends in phi, and it can also give Bremsstrahlung along the way. So that also we can recover with this algorithm, which is a Mustache supercluster algorithm. And as you can see in this step, only one cluster which was related to this photon conversion or maybe electron giving Bremsstrahlung has been recovered. But in the next step, the Bremsstrahlung cluster, which are much separated from the electron, from the original electron, which are not collected by this previous step, it can be recovered later by this step, in which the point at which this track, it intersects with the electromagnetic calorimeter layer, a tangent is drawn from this tracker layer to the electromagnetic calorimeter layer. And if we find the energy deposition at that layer, then we include that also in the original electromagnetic calorimeter energy deposit. And then we sum up all the energies, and then we reconstruct photon or electron, to say. And yeah, and sure, for the electron reconstruction, we also do the matching with the tracker layers, and also do the matching of a track and the electromagnetic calorimeter, and form the track. So in the global event description, all electrons and photons are made of these refined superclusters, in which Bremsstrahlung or the conversion recovery is done. So at CMS, we use lead-lead collision at we had lead-lead collision at 5.02 TeV, and that those collisions happened in 2015 and in 2018. And we collected about 390 microbarn inverse of data in 2015 and 1600 microbarn inverse in 2018. And as I mentioned, we prepare a specific trigger for this kind of analysis. So in this trigger, we require that we should have at least 2 photons or 2 electrons in the electromagnetic calorimeter, each with transverse energy greater than 2 GeV. And at least one of the two hadron forward calorimeter, it should be empty. That means it should not have any signal, that is no energy deposition. And you can see light by light scattering event display over here, where you can see that we have exactly 2 towers in the final state. That is, these towers are electromagnetic calorimeter energy deposits, and these small are the noise. And we do not have any activity in the tracker or anywhere in the muon detector or anything else. And then, as I mentioned, we reconstruct the photons. So the standard CMS reconstruction is done basically for transverse energy greater than 10 GeV. But the signal for this analysis is in the lower transverse energy region, which so basically it starts from 2 GeV, which is very less in terms of CMS analysis. So we retuned the photon reconstruction algorithm, and then we could access this low energy photons. And to identify this photon and to remove the background, we have applied different shower shape criteria so that we can remove the photons which are coming from the decay of neutral hadrons. And also to clean unusually high energy deposits, we apply some criteria. So today I'm going to show the results based on CMS 2015 analysis only, because this 2018 results are not out yet. So we are preparing those results. So I will not present them today. Okay. So here I would like to mention that, okay, after reconstructing the photons, are we able to also, means suppose whatever photon energy was there originally, are we able to reconstruct that in the electromagnetic calorimeter or not? So that is amounted by the energy scale. So energy scale is basically it says how well we are able to reconstruct the photons. So that we estimate from the gamma gamma to E plus E minus, that is the QED process from the with the data driven method, and we use E over P variable. E is the energy in this supercluster, and P is the momentum of the track. So we expect that this E over P should be around 1. So means if we neglect the electron mass, because electron mass is around 0.5 MeV, while these energies are of the order of GeV. So we can safely neglect electron mass, and we expect that this ratio, it should be 1. And if it is 1, then we can say that we are able to properly reconstruct these superclusters. So you can see here at very low energy. So these are the E over P plots. That is the energy scale in various bins of transverse energy, starting from low energy bin to the higher energy bin. So you can see that the energy scale almost seems to be at 1, and the resolution is poorer at lower energy. And if we go to higher energy, the resolution becomes better. So here you can see the energy scale as a function of supercluster ET for the data in black, and for the Monte Carlo in red. And it is in the Beryl region, that is for eta less than 1.47, and this is for eta greater than 1.47, so it is less than 2.4. And the energy scale is almost 1. So it is like we can say 5% off with respect to unity, and here it is around 15% off with respect to unity. And the resolution is around 14% in the Beryl region, and it is around 28% in the ENCAP region. So example, if we have 2 GeV photon measured, then the uncertainty is around 0.3 GeV at very low energy. And for the ENCAP region, the uncertainty is of around 0.5 GeV. And at higher energy, obviously, we are able to means we have a better resolution. So now I will talk about photon reconstruction and identification efficiency. So since we have, even for the light by light scattering process, the cross section for this process is very low. So from that process, we have very low photons to estimate the photon reconstruction efficiency. So what we do is we take this gamma gamma to E plus E minus event, that is this QED process, in which one of the electron undergoes hard Bremsstrahlung. And as I mentioned, this is just the track in the trackers that we can reconstruct. And in the electromagnetic calorimeter, we do not have any energy deposit coming from this electron, but what we have is the Bremsstrahlung photon energy. So that we check, and that we check using this tag and probe analysis method. So this electron, it should be above 5 GeV, passing all the identification criteria, etc. And this probe, it should be unmatched with this electron track. And this passing probe, it should be exactly 1 photon in the event, greater than 2 GeV. And it should also not match with the track. And later you can see the single photon efficiency as a function of ET of the photon. So you can see here that at 2 GeV energy, we have around 55% efficiency. And as we are going above 6 GeV, we have around 95% efficiency for reconstructing the photons. And for the trigger, there are 2 parts, as I mentioned earlier. And the trigger efficiency at lower energy, it is around 65 GeV. Sorry, 65%. And as we go above 5 GeV, it is around 97%. And here also for the HF, that is for the hadron forward calorimeter part of the trigger, it is also around 97%. So now we have established all those things that, okay, we are able to reconstruct the photon, and trigger is also working fine at low energy. So after that, we apply various event selection criteria. And first event selection criteria which we apply is that we reject the events if it has any tracks with PT greater than 0.1 GeV, because you can see here that up to this point, with all these cuts, that is with the trigger, with requiring photons, and also with the photon identification efficiency, we are mainly dominated by this QED process, and the background is also very large. You can see from this cut flow table. And as soon as we apply this charge exclusivity criteria, so we reduce this background, that is this QED background, from 15,000 events to directly 10 events. So we reduce the background a lot. And later we apply this neutral exclusivity criteria, that is we reject any events if it has any energy deposit in the electromagnetic calorimeter, hadron, or forward calorimeter, apart from the signal, that is apart from photon. So if we see any events, if we see any events with tower energy greater than expected noise level, then we remove those events. And later we apply that the ecoplanarity should be less than 0.01. So these 2 photons, it should be back to back in the azimuthal direction. And the diphoton PT should be less than 1 GeV, so that we can reduce all the non-exclusive backgrounds.
Why are they back to back? So this whatever action is being created, it's at rest, or what?
Yeah, it is at rest. They are produced at rest, and then they are decaying to photon.
So actually, I had a similar question. I mean, is this cut placed with a specific motivation to reduce a particular background, or is there a reason why you expect this to happen for the axionic photons?
Okay, so let me explain again. So for the axion, so the search which we are doing, it is for the ultra-peripheral collision, and it is also we are considering exclusive axion-like particle production. Mm-hmm. So we expect that even if we are considering the search for axion-like particles, we should have exactly 2 photons in the final state, and we should not have any activity. So that assumption drives our all these cut selection.
No, I understand that, but the ecoplanarity cut specifically.
Yeah, the axion is also produced at rest, and then it decays to photon that we have considered.
Or is it because the mass is large compared to the photon virtually? No, that can't be right.
So the systems that you are considering them to be so peripheral that no direct interaction happens, only this
Yes.
induced electromagnetic field.
Yes.
And then, but still, you are looking at particles which are like 10 GeV or 15 GeV, right?
Yes. Yes.
So that's not a very, even for these processes, is that considered a high mass, or I don't know what are the.
No, it is not considered a high mass. Yeah, it is not considered. Yeah, for the diphoton decay, yes, it is considered high mass because the production cross section is less. But for the QED process, means as you can see here, we can go up to 90 GeV.
So what would, okay, let me ask this. What would give 2 photons with an A-phi of, let's say, 0.5 or 0.05? These are the processes you are trying to cut off, right?
Okay, so so suppose if we consider A-phi, that is the Axion mass, you are saying it is 0.05, right?
No. This A-phi, you're putting a cart at
Yes.
coplanarity cart of, so let's say something which is not within that cart. Let's say A-phi
Yeah.
of 0.05.
Yeah.
What are the processes that will produce that?
Okay, so here you can see that plot, that is the diphoton ecoplanarity. So in the very low ecoplanarity region, we have this light by light scattering events only, and this central exclusive production, which is coming from the two gluon exchange. So it has a larger ecoplanarity, and this QED process has also larger ecoplanarity. So in this region, we expect the events only from light by light or from Axion-like particle production.
Okay, yeah, my question is answered.
Yeah, but did you understand why?
Yeah, it must have to do with the mass of the Axion somehow, but
Actually, it is because this system is produced at rest and then it is decaying to 2 photons. So because of that, you can see from this diagram that these photons which are produced are back to back in the azimuthal direction.
I mean, is it because if you have an additional boost, that will require extra energy, and that's why those processes are suppressed? Is that the intuition?
Yeah, any extra boost will come from some initial state radiation, but then you have this central veto, right? So you're rejecting everything that has any extra radiation.
Boost of what?
Of the Axion that
Or
is
the
produced.
Axion, yes, exactly.
Okay, I'm now thoroughly confused. So let me ask something extremely stupid. If I was talking about Axion at rest, that will also give very small eta, no?
Yeah, rather than at rest, I don't think you need to consider it at rest, so to speak. But it does not have to have X and Y direction momentum. It can have Z direction momentum, but nothing in X and Y.
Nothing in X and Y. Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, longitudinal boost is okay, but then the point is that it has to be the photons should be detected within eta 2.5.
Photon should be, yeah. So
that already says something that, okay,
So something that does not have a, so the initial state is such that it does not have a large transverse momentum. That is the point, is it?
Basically, we are assuming, if I understand, that nothing else is being produced along with the axion.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think
Because
what
if it
Somen
had,
is
sorry.
okay, complete. Yeah, no,
No,
I'm
that
just
is
saying.
true. What we are saying that if it is not produced, nothing else is produced, then its PT is 0. And if it is light enough, then still we are the whole thing is that still it is it will be, then it will be isotropic or what? If mostly it is at I don't know. I'm
Oh,
also confused.
No,
So
no, it's not
you are
isotropic. I
it,
think, yeah, go ahead.
no.
I
If it is boosted highly in the
Yeah.
longitudinal direction, then the photons also will not be so much detected in such large angles. No,
No, but she is allowing eta of 3 or something
up to
like
3,
that.
2.5 roughly. That is
Yeah.
the NCAP region.
Yeah. So I think whatever is happening in the initial state, it's a two particle process which are more or less collinear with the beam direction. So there is no transverse momentum in the initial state, so that whatever is produced is going along the beam direction and
So
then
in
decaying.
general, yeah, that is true. In general, for PP collision, we do assume that, no? That, yeah, okay, I also don't know. That why we are saying back to back it should be.
Actually, the
It
transfer,
is highly ultra peripheral, means that impact parameter is quite, so that the momentum transfer as such is just enough to produce the axion, I guess. So that the axion is produced at rest and that's it, nothing else is produced.
Okay, so to me it looks like the assumption is more like it's whatever is produced, if it is moving, it's moving along the beam direction and not in any other direction. I mean, it doesn't have to be at rest, presumably, because then the eta cut would have been very, very stringent, I guess.
No, longitudinal boost means it will have a higher eta. Photons also will have some higher eta.
Okay.
If it is completely at rest without any load, okay, we agree that transverse boost is not there. So if longitudinal boost is there, then in the lab frame, we will not see the photons back to back.
I think maybe it's just
I think they're back to back only in the azimuthal direction.
Exactly, they're always back to back in the azimuthal, and the
Fine.
longitudinal it need not be back to back.
Yeah, eta wise it can be different. Sorry,
Yeah,
yes, that is
right,
true.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Ruchi, you can continue now.
No, sorry, I am also just want confusion. What is the mass of this axion here you consider?
in the analysis, we are considering from 5 GeV to around 90 GeV.
Okay, so this, if is ET greater than 10 GeV, the photon what you select, if it is go the forward direction, then the mass, what should be the mass? If it is small mass, it
No, she has ET greater than 2 GeV.
Yes, we have ET greater than 2 GeV.
Okay, oh, it is 2 GeV.
Yes.
So even though ET 2 GeV point, if it is 2.5, then what is the minimum mass is required? Because if the mass is smaller than if it is going along the z direction, it will mainly go along that direction. Only if the mass is more, then only it will come in this
Central region.
center. With some
more within the detector acceptance. Yeah.
Do you have roughly the acceptance of this? Let's say as a function of mass, this your acceptance acceptance efficiency of your signal event.
I don't have the plot right now, but I do have the plot. Yes. Okay, so suppose if the invariant mass of the axion is 5 GeV, it will decay into 2 photons of roughly equal energy. So the ET of the photon will be 2.5, 2.5.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so as I was mentioning, this central exclusive production process was not available during that time in any in
So
any event
just to
generator.
Ruchi, sorry, just to get this. So not only for the action production, in general for studying light by light scattering, you will put this same coplanarity cut, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah,
Or
go ahead.
even if we want to study this, suppose this electron positron pair production, then also we put this ecoplanarity less than 0.01.
So anything where you just want the initial photons only to do whatever they're doing, then you are putting this coplanarity cut.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, fine. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so the control region for this process is you can see here that the central exclusive production process is this background is dominant for the larger ecoplanarity value, and this background normalization can be estimated by normalizing this Monte Carlo to the region above 0.02 ecoplanarity. And after normalizing that with that number in the signal region, so this is our signal region. We find that this background contribution is of around 3 events. And other important background which I was mentioning was gamma gamma going to E plus E minus in the final state, where this electron undergoes Bremsstrahlung and can be misidentified as photon. So to fully understand this background and to see that if we are able to control this background or not, what we require that we have redone the same analysis with the cuts which I mentioned. So we kept all the cuts same as for the light by light analysis. But instead of requiring 2 photons in the final state, now we require electron and positron in the final state. And here you can see the black points in the data, black points for the data, and yellow color histogram is for the Monte Carlo generated from Starlight event generator. Here you can see the di-electron ecoplanarity, and here is the di-electron invariant mass starting from 5 GeV to around 90 GeV. And we can say that we have a very good agreement over this invariant mass region. So this confirms that whatever retuning we had done for the electron gamma photon, C gamma particle reconstruction, that works well. And as we are also using this process for the photon reconstruction identification and all sorts of efficiencies, we can say that we can rely on this Monte Carlo. And with all those cuts which I mentioned over here, with that we have around 1 event from this QED background in this light by light signal region. And after applying all the cuts, here you can see the kinematic distributions for the photon. So here is the photon ET, and here is the photon eta. So our signal region I already mentioned that the invariant mass should be greater than 5 GeV, and the ecoplanarity should be less than 0.01. And here are the kinematic distributions for the diphotons. So this plot is the diphoton invariant mass. Black are the data, and this orange color histogram is light by light Monte Carlo. This purple color is the central exclusive production, and the yellow one is the QED. Here is the diphoton ecoplanarity, and here is the diphoton PT. So after applying all the cuts, we observed 14 light by light candidate events, and expected signal from Monte Carlo was around 9 events, and the background was around 4 events. In this measure, yields and kinematic distributions are in good agreement given the statistical uncertainty. So what we did was first we measured this light by light to the QED cross section ratio, which takes into account the efficiency of the trigger And if we take this ratio, then few exclusivity criteria which we apply, so those uncertainties cancel out. So because of that, we took this ratio. And at that time, luminosity uncertainty was also not available. So because of that, we took the ratio of this two cross sections. We estimated this ratio from our measurement to be around 25 into 10 raised to 6. And then we multiply this ratio with the cross section from starlight. That is the QED cross section. We take it from the starlight, which is around 4.82 millibarn. And then we finally measure the light by light cross section. And it is around 120 nanobarn. And it is almost same, I mean, within the statistical uncertainty. It is in comparison with the MATGRAPH results. And from the ecoplanarity distribution, we obtained the significance of the light by light process. And it was around 3.7 sigma we observed, and 3.5 sigma was expected. So now later we use this diphoton invariant mass.
Sorry, what was 3.7 sigma? I didn't get. This number doesn't look 3.7 sigma to me. Does it?
3.7 sigma significance for this light by light process, this for these black points.
But these numbers that you had,
Mhm.
they are like 2.5 sigma. Go back to those numbers. 120 plus minus 46. Isn't that like 2.5?
These are the cross sections.
Achha.
And these are estimated from the number of events from the ecoplanarity distribution.
Achha. Okay.
So then later we use this diphoton invariant mass distribution to search for the pseudoscalar axion-like particle, where these other processes, that is this light by light central exclusive production and this QED process, these all are considered as a background. And we simulated these axion-like particle samples from the starlight event generator, and from masses 5 GeV to around 290 GeV. You can see the masses here. And then we also estimated the axion-like particle acceptance efficiency in the expected diphoton mass template from Monte Carlo. And then later we corrected this efficiency in the same way as we did for the light by light analysis, that we applied the scale factors to correct those efficiencies because it was estimated from the Monte Carlo. And a bin maximum likelihood fit was performed on the signal and background contributions on the data. And these systematic uncertainties were included as a notions parameters. And you can see here that no significant excess on the axion-like particle production was observed in data above light by light plus background, light by light signal plus background. And the upper limit on particle production cross section at 95% confidence level was extracted, assuming the 100% branching ratio of axion-like particle to diphotons. And then later we used this cross sections and estimated the limits as a function of coupling of axion and photon coupling. And you can see the axion-like particle coupling to electromagnetic current over here. That is the coupling to the photons. And here you can see these green lines, that is coupling of, here the coupling is considered to the hypercharge. And you can see here, these are the results from the CMS experiment. And these are our observed, this green color line were observed lines. And in the 5 to around 50 GeV, these were the new constraints provided on the coupling to the electromagnetic current. And later, Atlas recently published their limits on the axon-like particles. So I will talk about that as well. So Atlas is using 2015 plus 2018 lead data with luminosity 2.2 nanobarn inverse. And the analysis strategy and the event selection criteria is same as CMS. So first, they measure this light by light process, and here you can see the unfolded distributions for the diphoton invariant mass, for the diphoton rapidity, and for the PT of photon 1 plus photon 2 divided by 2 and the cos theta star. So the measured fiducial cross section from Atlas is 120 nanobarn, and the super Schick. So later this super Schick Monte Carlo was available, which included light by light process in the event generation. So we can compare it to that. So this super Schick Monte Carlo expectation is around 78 nanobarn, and the data to theory ratio from Atlas is 1.5. And they used this diphoton invariant mass and then applied and then extracted the similar limits for the axon-like particle production. And they have generated the invariant mass from the 6 GeV to around 100 GeV. And here you can see the results from the Atlas, and the cross sections above 2 to 70 nanobarn are excluded by Atlas at 95% confidence level. And our CMS analysis is ongoing with the 2018 data, and our plan is also to combine 2015 and 2018. So stay tuned. And apart from that, I can say that using this ultra-peripheral heavy ion collision, we can provide the most stringent limit in this masses. And further, what I would like to mention is that at CMS and at Atlas, since we have the rapidity coverage up to 2.5, so we cannot go in the forward rapidity to access lower photon PT. We cannot do that measurement so to go in the lower invariant mass region. But at LHCb, the eta coverage is from 2 to 4 in units, and photon PT also they can go to lower photon PT, that is around 0.2 GeV, and invariant mass also they can access from 1 GeV. So here are the some theoretical calculations. You can see that in this region, that is 1 to around 5 GeV, LHCb can also provide the constraint. These are the results from the lead-lead collisions, and these are the results from the proton-lead collisions. Okay, so I would like to summarize. Ultra-peripheral lead-lead collisions at LHC were used to search for axon-like particles, and in which light by light scattering, QED process of electron pair production, and central exclusive production were identified as the MAN background. And we provided the evidence for light by light scattering with 3.7 sigma significance using 2015 lead-lead collision. And Atlas provided the observation for light by light scattering of 8.2 sigma significance. And with 2015 and 2018, they estimated they extracted the limits on axon-like particles. And you can see that we do not see any significant excess in the diphoton mass distribution. And at LHC, we could extract the most stringent limit in the axon-like particles for masses 5 to 100 GeV. Thank you. That's all from my side.
Yeah, just a curiosity. What is the trigger threshold for photons in lead-lead collisions?
For our case, it was 2 GeV. because as we have ultra-peripheral collision, so the trigger rate is not that higher. So we can go to lower PT in the photon.
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ কেন কিছু নেই
So your ultra-peripheral definition is no other charged particle, is that right?
দুপুরে
No charged particle is being created.
Ultra-peripheral
এই করো আবার
definition means,
একটু বলি
so first I would like to
দুপুরেই বলে
explain
দিতে
one thing.
Can
So,
the host mute Govindu?
Okay, done.
Okay, so suppose when we have a central collision, that is on head-on collision, then when we have the head-on collision, these two ions interact with each other, and whatever interaction means whatever particles are produced, they all go in the forward direction, and then we have the energy deposit in the forward direction, that is in the hadron forward calorimeter, if we have the central collision. So first, to check that we have the ultra-peripheral collision, we require that we do not have any activity here. So that way we identify that these are ultra-peripheral collision. But yeah, in
So
ultra-peripheral,
no particles in the hadron forward calorimeter.
yes.
Okay. Yeah. One curiosity is not really related to your talk, but in that slide that you showed in the end, there was something called beam dump, which had a very low. What exactly is this? The beam dumps.
I'm not sure. It is from the beam dump kind of experiment.
Not from these experiments at all. This is some
Yeah,
other
it is
experiment.
not from this experiment at all. It is from different experiment.
Okay.
And just one question. So, I mean, this is sort of outside your talk, but I mean, there are constraints on axions from, there is this behind the wall kind of experiments, etc. I'm assuming that they probe a different region. Do you
I
have?
think those are typically much lower mass range.
Yes, they are much
Yeah, I was just trying to see. Okay.
light
Yeah.
shining wall kind of experiment.
Okay, right. Okay.
10 raised to minus 12 GeV.
Oh, that's
So milli electron volt.
I see. Okay, yeah. This is the figure I was looking for. Okay. Any further questions? If not, thank you to the speaker.